Ambassador Kethrian stared at the small blue pill in their four-fingered hand. The pill was smooth and round, about the size of a grain from their home world. It sat in their palm like a tiny mystery that made their stomach twist with worry. The meeting room was full of other alien diplomats, all holding the same blue pills. Everyone looked nervous. The air recyclers hummed quietly, but the room felt heavy with fear. Kethrian had been a diplomat for 20 years, but they had never seen anything like this. "I don't understand," said Ambassador Veltar from the Water Worlds. His blue skin had turned pale, and his gill slits were opening and closing too fast. "Why do we need medicine just to meet another species?" Kethrian's assistant, Nixera, stood at the front of the room holding a data pad. Her hands were shaking a little. "The Galactic Medical Council made this rule 3 days ago. Every diplomat must take the psychological stabilization compound before meeting the humans from Sol 3. There are no exceptions." "But that's crazy," whispered Delegate Tornek from the Desert Federation. His sand-colored shell was clicking nervously. "In my whole life I've met beings from over 200 worlds. I never needed pills before." Nixera looked at her data pad and took a deep breath. "The humans are different. They come from what we call a death world." The room became very quiet. Everyone knew about death worlds. These were planets so dangerous that most civilized beings couldn't live there. The gravity was too strong, the air was poison, the weather could kill you, and deadly creatures lived everywhere. Scientists said that complex life was impossible on such worlds. But they were wrong. "Tell us about their world," said Ambassador Quinera from the forest colonies. Her leaf-like skin had turned from green to yellow with stress. Nixera touched her data pad and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a blue and green planet that looked beautiful from space. But as the image zoomed in, gasps filled the room. "Sol 3, which the humans call Earth, has gravity that is twice as strong as most civilized worlds," Nixera explained. "The atmosphere contains poison gases that would kill most of us in minutes. The surface temperature changes so much that water turns solid in some places and becomes gas in others." The hologram showed vast bodies of liquid that the humans called oceans. The water was full of salt and other chemicals that would burn alien skin. Huge storms moved across the surface with winds that could throw a starship around like a toy. "Look at this," Nixera said, changing the image. Now they could see massive geological structures reaching toward the sky. The humans climb these mountains for fun. The air gets thinner as you go up, making it hard to breathe. One mistake means falling to your death. Delegate Porthak from the Crystal Worlds made a sound like breaking glass. "They climb those things by choice?" "Yes. They also swim in the oceans with creatures that could eat them. They run long distances until their bodies are ready to collapse. They fight each other in organized competitions and call it sport." Nixera's voice was getting quieter with each fact. "Our scouts watched them and the humans seemed to enjoy all of it." Kethrian felt sick. Their species had evolved on a peaceful world where the biggest danger was a mild rainstorm. The idea of choosing to do dangerous things was completely alien to them. "There's more," Nixera continued. "The humans don't just survive on their death world. They've made it even more dangerous. They build machines that move faster than any living thing should move. They create explosions for entertainment. They eat foods that would burn holes in most alien digestive systems." Ambassador Yildana from the floating cities raised a tentacle. "How many humans are there?" "Over 7 billion. The number hit the room like a shockwave. 7 billion beings who lived on a death world and enjoyed it. 7 billion creatures who had turned survival into a game. The medical teams studied videos of human behavior," Nixera went on. "They found that humans need stress and danger to be happy. Without challenges they become sad and sick. Their bodies are designed to handle pain and fear that would kill most of us." She showed them a video of humans engaged in something they called extreme sports. Aliens in the room began making distressed noises as they watched beings throw themselves from high places with only thin fabric to slow their fall. Others were racing through forests on primitive wheeled devices, jumping over obstacles that could crush them. "The pills will help calm our natural panic responses," Nixera explained. "Without them, most species go into shock just from being near humans. They give off what our scientists call a predator field, a psychological pressure that makes other beings feel like prey." Kethrian looked around the room. Every diplomat was staring at their pill with new understanding. They weren't just meeting another species. They were about to encounter beings who had turned their own death world into a playground. "When do the humans arrive?" asked someone in the back. "In 6 hours." The number felt like a countdown to doom. 6 hours until they faced beings who considered mortal danger to be entertainment. 6 hours until they met creatures who had survived everything their world could throw at them and asked for more. One by one the diplomats began swallowing their pills. Kethrian held theirs up to the light, seeing how the medication caught the artificial illumination of the meeting room. Such a small thing to stand between civilized beings and complete psychological breakdown. They put the pill in their mouth and swallowed it quickly before they could change their mind. Around the room, others did the same. Within minutes, an artificial calm began to settle over their thoughts, like a soft blanket covering their fear. But even through the medication, one thought kept echoing in Kethrian's mind. What kind of beings choose to live in hell and call it home? Soon they would find out. The medicine was not strong enough. Ambassador Kethrian felt this truth the moment the human delegation walked into the diplomatic chamber. Even with the blue pill making their thoughts slow and calm, their body wanted to run away. Every instinct screamed danger. The humans looked wrong in a way that was hard to explain. They moved too smoothly for beings from a high-gravity world. Their eyes swept the room constantly, like predators looking for threats or prey. And when they smiled, showing their white teeth, several aliens in the back row stepped backward without thinking. "Good morning everyone," said the lead human in a voice that was somehow both friendly and terrifying. "I'm Ambassador Jean Kim from Earth. Thank you for welcoming us to the Galactic Council." Kethrian found their voice, though it came out shaky. We are honored to meet you, Ambassador Kim." Jin's emotional state changed instantly from formal politeness to warm enthusiasm. The sudden shift made Delegate Kixera from the Gentle Worlds make a small crying sound. Most species took hours or days to change their feelings so completely. "This is incredible," Jean continued, looking around the chamber with bright eyes. "I've dreamed of meeting other civilizations since I was a child. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the stars, and I always wondered who might be out there." The human's emotional intensity was like standing too close to a fire. Kethrian could feel waves of excitement and curiosity coming from Jean that made their own nervous system want to shut down. "Please tell us about your journey here," said Ambassador Veltar, though his blue skin had turned almost white with stress. "Oh, it was amazing," Jean replied. "Though I have to admit, the low gravity on your ships made me feel strange. On Earth, I'm used to weighing about 70 kilograms, but here I feel like I could jump right through the ceiling." The casual mention of Earth's crushing gravity sent ripples of fear through the alien delegates. 70 kilograms of weight pressing down constantly? Most species would be flattened. Jean seemed to notice the aliens' distress but misunderstood the cause. "Are you all feeling okay? You look a bit pale. Maybe the air mixture isn't quite right? I know our oxygen requirements are pretty high compared to most worlds." "We're fine," Kethrian lied quickly. "Please tell us about your homeworld's culture." Jin's eyes lit up with joy that felt like staring into a star. "Where do I start? Earth is such a beautiful, exciting place. Just last month I went diving in the Pacific Ocean. That's one of our biggest water bodies. I swam down about 30 meters to see the coral reefs." Ambassador Zilthara from the Sky Cities made a choking sound. The idea of voluntarily entering deep water where pressure could crush you was beyond their understanding. "And the marine life is incredible," Jean continued, not noticing the growing panic in the room. "I saw sharks. They're these amazing predators with rows of sharp teeth. Beautiful creatures, really, though you have to be careful around them." Delegate Porthak began making distressed clicking sounds. The translator struggled with the concept of finding predators beautiful, and gave up, simply displaying error messages. Jean looked concerned. "Is your colleague all right? Should I call our medical officer?" "Dr. Sue Park is excellent. She learned emergency medicine in combat zones." The phrase combat zones caused 3 more delegates to require immediate assistance from their aides. The idea that humans practiced medicine in areas where violence was happening seemed impossible to process. "Perhaps we could discuss your recreational activities?" suggested Kethrian desperately, hoping to move to safer topics. "Oh, I love sports," Jean said with enthusiasm that made everyone flinch. "I play rugby. That's a game where 2 teams try to carry a ball across a field while the other team tries to stop them. It involves a lot of physical contact and tackling." Jean pulled out a small device and showed them a video. On the screen, humans were running at each other at high speed, colliding with impacts that would hospitalize most alien species, then getting up and doing it again. The aliens watched in horror as the humans seemed to enjoy being knocked down and hurt. "And this is from my rock climbing trip last year," Jean continued, switching to another video. The screen now showed a human clinging to a vertical stone face hundreds of meters above the ground, with only thin ropes for safety. The view from the top was worth every dangerous moment. Ambassador Yildana from the Peace Worlds fainted. Her aide rushed forward with emergency medication while others called for medical assistance. "Oh no, is she hurt?" Jean asked, moving toward the unconscious alien with swift, predator-like grace that made everyone else back away. "I have first aid training. I learned it for wilderness survival courses." The translator rendered wilderness survival as deliberately entering areas where death is likely, which caused a small panic among the remaining conscious delegates. "We should perhaps take a break," Kethrian suggested quickly, though their own vision was starting to blur despite the medication. "Of course," Jean agreed easily. "This is probably a lot to take in all at once. On Earth we say that good relationships take time to build. My grandfather always told me that trust is earned through shared experiences and understanding." The humans' mention of family relationships and long-term thinking should have been comforting, but their casual intensity made even simple concepts feel overwhelming. As Jean left the chamber with their delegation, Kethrian noticed that the human moved with the fluid confidence of a being who had never encountered a situation they couldn't handle. Every step, every gesture radiated the kind of self-assurance that only came from surviving countless deadly challenges. The remaining aliens sat in shocked silence, all wondering the same thing. How could beings this dangerous be so completely unaware of the terror they inspired? Medical teams were already arriving to help the delegates who had collapsed, while others increased their medication doses. The first day of human integration was not going well. But somehow, Kethrian realized with growing dread, this was probably the humans being gentle. Dr. Yexmiron looked at the medical readings from yesterday's meeting and felt their 3 hearts skip beats. Even with the strongest medications available, the alien delegates had shown stress levels that should have been impossible for conscious beings. Some had nearly died just from sitting in the same room as the humans. The Galactic Council's emergency medical team was working around the clock, but they needed answers. Why were humans so terrifying to be around? What made them different from every other species in the galaxy? "Show me the recordings again," Dr. Yexmiron told their assistant. The main screen lit up with footage from the human delegation's rest area. The council had been recording everything, trying to understand these strange beings from the death world. What they saw made no sense. Ambassador Jean Kim was talking casually with another human, a woman named Sue Park who served as their medical officer. They were discussing something humans called weekend plans. "I'm thinking about going bungee jumping when we get back to Earth," Jean was saying while eating something that the scanner identified as containing chemicals toxic to most known life forms. "There's this great bridge about 200 meters high over a canyon. The fall takes about 8 seconds before the cord catches you." Dr. Yexmiron paused the recording. "Computer, define bungee jumping." Bungee jumping, a human recreational activity involving jumping from a high place while connected to a long elastic cord. Participants experience free fall until the cord stops their descent, then bounce up and down several times before being lowered to safety. The doctor's assistant made a sound like escaping gas. "They throw themselves off high places for fun?" "It gets worse," Dr. Yexmiron said, continuing the recording. Sue Park laughed, a sound that their translators rendered as expressing joy but felt like a predator's warning cry. "That sounds relaxing. I'm planning to go mountain biking down the Devil's Backbone Trail. It's this really narrow path along a cliff edge. One wrong turn and you fall about 300 meters. "Nice," Jean replied. "Nothing like a bit of danger to clear your head after a stressful week." Dr. Yexmiron stopped the recording again. The casual way the humans discussed activities that would kill most beings was disturbing enough, but there was something deeper here. Something that explained why every alien in their presence felt like prey. "Computer, analyze the psychological patterns in human speech and behavior." Data flowed across the screen. Heart rates, stress hormones, brain activity patterns, vocal tones. The computer had been studying the humans for days, trying to understand how their minds worked. "Analysis complete," the computer announced. Humans display constant low-level stress markers that indicate perpetual alertness to threats and opportunities. This appears to be their natural resting state. "What we would call panic, they call normal," Dr. Yexmiron whispered. The screen showed more data. Human brain scans revealed something incredible and terrifying. Their minds were always active, always scanning, always ready for danger or challenge. What other species experienced as overwhelming fear, humans experienced as mild interest. "Show me their entertainment," Dr. Yexmiron ordered. New footage appeared, this time from the humans' personal devices. They had shared some of their culture with the council, thinking it would help with diplomatic relations. Instead, it had sent most aliens to the medical bay. On screen, humans were engaging in something called mixed martial arts. Two humans were fighting each other with brutal efficiency, hitting and grappling until one was defeated. The crowd watching them was cheering with joy. They fight for entertainment, Dr. Yexmiron's assistant said weakly. Computer, show human children's activities. The new footage was somehow worse. Human children, small and supposedly vulnerable, were engaging in activities that would challenge adult aliens. They climbed tall structures, ran at high speeds, played games that involved collision and competition. They seemed to seek out challenges the way other species sought safety. Here's what I think is happening, Dr. Yexmiron said, turning to address the emergency council session that had been called. Humans have evolved to find satisfaction in what we consider existential threats. Their brains are wired to seek out stress, danger, and challenge. The assembled alien leaders shifted uncomfortably, even with their medications. They don't just survive on their death world, the doctor continued. They need the danger to function properly. Without challenges and stress, they become depressed and sick. They've turned survival into entertainment. On the screen behind them, more human footage played. Humans racing vehicles at impossible speeds, climbing frozen waterfalls, jumping out of flying aircraft with only thin fabric to slow their fall. Watch their faces, Dr. Yexmiron pointed out. They're happy. They're not surviving these activities, they're enjoying them. Council leader Mordak spoke up, their voice shaking despite the medication. Are you saying they're naturally violent? No, that's what makes this so frightening, Dr. Yexmiron replied. Our analysis shows they're highly cooperative, empathetic, and social. They care deeply about others and work together better than most species. But they've weaponized stress itself. More footage showed humans working together during emergencies, helping strangers, showing incredible kindness and cooperation. But even their helping behavior was intense, overwhelming, predatory in its efficiency. Every human constantly radiates what we can only call controlled predatory awareness, Dr. Yexmiron explained. They're always scanning for threats, challenges, and opportunities. What they consider normal alertness would trigger complete panic responses in most of our species. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The medication isn't really helping us deal with them, someone said quietly. It's just keeping us conscious long enough to be terrified. Dr. Yexmiron nodded grimly. They don't even realize they're doing it. To them, this is just how minds work. The doctor looked around at the assembled leaders, all struggling to process the information despite their chemical assistance. We're not just dealing with another species, Dr. Yex_Miron concluded. We're dealing with beings who have turned their own death world into a playground, and they want to be our friends. The alarm bell started screaming at 3 a.m, station time. The loud noise woke every sleeping delegate and sent them running from their beds in panic. Ambassador Kethrian stumbled into the corridor, still confused from sleep and the medication in their system. Red lights flashed everywhere. The station's computer voice spoke with calm words that made everyone more afraid. Emergency in Section C7. Hull damage detected. Toxic gas leak in life support systems. All people must go to emergency shelters now. Kethrian followed the crowd of scared aliens toward the nearest safe room. Everyone was pushing and making frightened noises. The medication they had taken made their thoughts slow, but it could not stop the deep fear that came from knowing they might die. The crowd stopped moving. Ahead of them, something was blocking the way. Through the mass of aliens, Kethrian could see the problem. A huge metal beam had fallen from the ceiling, crushing the corridor and trapping several delegates behind a wall of broken metal and poisonous smoke. The trapped aliens were making desperate sounds from behind the debris. The smoke was getting thicker, and the computer kept announcing that the toxic gas levels were rising fast. Everyone pressed against the blocked passage, but no one knew what to do. Then Ambassador Jean Kim appeared, moving through the crowd like water flowing around rocks. Behind Jean came Dr. Sue Park, carrying what looked like emergency equipment. Neither human showed any sign of the panic that was making every alien shake with fear. Sue, check the air readings, Jean said in a voice that cut through all the noise and confusion. I need to see how bad the structural damage is. Gas concentration is at 50 parts per million and going up fast, Sue replied, looking at a small device in her hand. Most species here will start dying if it reaches 100. We have maybe 8 minutes. Jean was already moving, climbing over the fallen beam with movements that looked impossible. The metal was sharp and the spaces between pieces were tiny, but Jean moved through them like they were made for climbing. Within seconds, Jean had disappeared into the deadly smoke on the other side. Is she crazy? Whispered Delegate Porthak, his crystal shell clicking with terror. The gas readings alone will kill her. Probably, Sue replied with the same calm tone she might use to discuss the weather. But Jean trained for search and rescue in the mountains back home. She's pulled people out of avalanches and building collapses. This is actually pretty easy for her. The human continued talking as if going into poison gas and unstable wreckage was just another day at work. She began organizing the panicking aliens into groups, telling them where to stand and what to do if the situation got worse. Strange sounds came from beyond the collapsed beam. Metal grinding against metal, followed by Jin's voice calling out measurements and information about what she could see. Found them. Jean shouted from somewhere in the deadly smoke. 3 delegates, 2 are unconscious. I need someone small enough to fit through a gap about half a meter wide. Without any hesitation, Sue began taking off her outer clothes. Going in, she called back, then turned to the watching aliens. If we're not back in 10 minutes, seal this section and save yourselves. Both humans disappeared into what every other being there considered certain death. Kethrian watched in complete shock. The humans had seen a life-threatening emergency and reacted with the same emotional level that most beings used for small problems. They were not fearless. Kethrian could see tension in their movements and hear stress in their voices, but they treated deadly danger like it was just another puzzle to solve. Around them, the other aliens stood frozen. Even with medication, most species could not function when faced with immediate death. But the humans had looked at the same situation and seen only a challenge that needed to be met. How are they doing this? Asked Ambassador Veltar, his blue skin now completely white with shock. They're built for this, said Dr. Nixera, who had appeared with medical equipment. Our studies show that humans actually function better under extreme stress. Their bodies and minds become more focused and efficient when they're in danger. More sounds came from behind the debris. The humans were working with tools, moving heavy objects, and talking to the trapped delegates in calm, reassuring voices. They're not just surviving in there, Kethrian realized. They're completely in control. 9 minutes later, both humans emerged from the wreckage. They were carrying the unconscious delegates with careful gentleness that seemed impossible after what they had just been through. Jean and Sue were covered in toxic residue, bleeding from several cuts and breathing hard from the physical effort. But they looked satisfied, almost happy. Anyone have clean water? Jean asked, setting down her rescued alien with tender care. These folks are going to need fluids when they wake up. Jean spoke as if she had not just risked death to save beings she had only met a few days ago. Sue was already checking the rescued delegates for injuries, her hands steady and sure despite the poison she had been breathing. Medical teams are on the way, Dr. Nixera reported. Good, Sue replied. The gas exposure wasn't too bad, but one of them has a broken limb. Nothing that won't heal with proper treatment. The humans talked about the rescue like it was a routine task they had completed at work. They showed no signs of the psychological shock that would have left most aliens unable to function for days. As emergency teams arrived to help the rescued delegates, Kethrian stared at the humans with new understanding. These beings did not just survive crises, they seemed to become more alive during them. What kind of species treated saving lives as just another interesting problem to solve? 6 months had passed since the emergency on the station, and Ambassador Kethrian sat in their office looking at a mountain of new rules and procedures. The Deathworlder integration protocols now filled 23 thick books. Every page described new ways to safely interact with humans. The little blue pills were still required for all meetings, but now there were many other things too. Special training centers had been built where aliens could slowly get used to being around humans. Medical teams waited at every diplomatic meeting. Psychological help services had grown larger than anyone thought possible. But the biggest change was not in the rules. It was in how the galaxy saw itself. The monthly reports came in, said Nixera, walking into the office with her arms full of data pads. Human trade missions have made business better in 22-star systems. They have solved 8 conflicts that had been stuck for years. And somehow, crime has dropped by half in areas where humans visit regularly. Kethrian nodded, not surprised by the news. They had spent months studying what humans did to other species. Humans did not just survive dangerous situations, they looked for problems and fixed them. Their easy relationship with danger made them perfect helpers when other species were too afraid to act. What about the training program? Kethrian asked. Better than we hoped, Nixera replied. Delegates who finished the full course say that humans are still very intense, but they make excellent allies. Several council members have asked for human advisors to help with difficult negotiations. Through the office window, Kethrian could see a human transport ship connecting to the station. The crew inside would still be carrying those little blue pills just in case, but more and more they were seen as ambassadors from a species that did not fear the universe's challenges. They welcomed them. At that moment, Ambassador Jean Kim's voice came over the station's communication system. Jean was announcing that the Earth delegation was organizing something called a charity run around the station's outer hull. They wanted to raise money for medical supplies for struggling colonies. The idea of humans running around the outside of a space station in vacuum suits for fun and charity would have caused mass panic 6 months ago. Now it just made Kethrian reach for their medication and smile at the same time. You know, Kethrian said to Nixera, maybe the galaxy needed to remember that the universe is dangerous. We had become too comfortable, too safe. The humans remind us that staying alive is not just about avoiding risks. They remind us that sometimes you have to run toward the danger, Nixera agreed. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the office. Come in, Kethrian called. The door opened and Jean Kim walked in, followed by Dr. Sue Park. Both humans looked relaxed and happy, which still made Kethrian's survival instincts flutter with worry despite the medication. Good morning, Jean said with that bright smile that used to terrify everyone. We wanted to thank you personally for all the work you've done on the integration protocols. It has been necessary, Kethrian replied carefully. Sue stepped forward holding a small package. We brought you something from Earth. It's called chocolate. Most humans consider it a comfort food when we're feeling stressed. Kethrian accepted the package with curiosity. The scanning systems had already identified it as containing several compounds that would be mildly toxic to their species, but not dangerous in small amounts. The fact that humans ate mildly poisonous things for pleasure was just another reminder of their strange nature. Thank you, Kethrian said sincerely. How are you finding life on the station? It's wonderful, Jean replied. Though we miss the gravity and the challenge of Earth. Sue and I have been talking about organizing some recreational activities that other species might enjoy. Maybe some low-risk versions of human sports. The phrase low-risk versions made Kethrian wonder what humans considered high-risk, but they decided not to ask. We've also been working with the Council's engineers, Sue added. Human experience with dangerous environments has given us some ideas for improving station safety systems. We think we can make emergency procedures much more effective. Of course, the humans wanted to make things safer for everyone else while finding ways to add more excitement to their own lives. It was perfectly typical of their contradictory nature. That sounds very helpful, Kethrian said. As the humans left the office, Kethrian watched them move with that fluid confidence that came from never encountering a problem they could not solve. 6 months ago that confidence had been terrifying. Now it was almost comforting. The next supply ship from Earth arrives tomorrow, Nixera mentioned, looking at her schedule. They're bringing a delegation of human scientists who want to study peaceful coexistence with other species. Scientists who study peace, Kethrian mused. From a species that considers war to be one of many recreational activities. Do you think we'll ever really understand them? Nixera asked. Kethrian looked out at the stars, thinking about the question. Maybe understanding is not the point. Maybe we just need to accept that the universe is big enough for species like us, who want safety and comfort, and species like them, who want challenge and excitement. The communication system crackled to life again. This time it was Dr. Sue Park announcing that the human medical team had developed new trauma treatment techniques based on their experience with extreme sports injuries. The techniques could help any species recover faster from accidents. Even their hobbies led to medical breakthroughs. Kethrian reached for their medication then stopped. For the first time in months they felt curious instead of afraid. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally getting used to living in a galaxy with humans. Maybe the universe was more interesting with Deathworlders in it.